Aloha, this is Santa Surfing. Welcome to Beach Broadcast. Today is Wednesday, September 24th, 2025. How are you all doing? How is your heart? Huh? A lot of things are going on. I'm going to cover as much as I can on this podcast. I want to thank you so much for joining us on x.com as a subscriber and also on santasurfing.locals.com. And we have ad-free content for both of those places. And then also on our locals, we have live shows. I'm still trying to figure out how to do it for our X subscribers. So once I get that figured out, then yes, I'll have it on both the locals and on X for subscribers. And if you want to know if you're getting like accounts that says greetings, are you excited about Jasar and Dasar? That's not coming from me. I don't send out initial DMs. I respond to as many as I can. My social media accounts are only right here. I only have one of each. All right. And then on YouTube is my channel there. And we now have Inspirationals. And then Rumble, I will be ending that on October 8th. Well, let me just go ahead and dive right in. I'm going to give just some Trump UN speech highlights. Ryan Routh is guilty and he faces life in prison. And then all of a sudden, the DC, there's cement fencing that's up. During the speech, President Trump, I will say, he came out swinging. He didn't hold back. He called out the globalists and their agenda. But before that happened, Emmanuel Macron, there was a protest going on in Europe, and I'm wondering whatever happened to him with in France. But he had to get out of his car, and because the President Trump was coming through, and they had to block the streets, and he was trying to get to the UN office, and this is what happened.
I'm sorry, I'm the president. I'm really sorry. It's just that everything's in frozen right now. There's a motorcade coming right now. I'm sorry.
If you don't see it, let me cross. How are you? Guess what? I'm waiting in the street because everything is frozen for you. Which street?
So he had to walk down the street, and there were people that were getting selfies with him, and he had to walk down the street because President Trump says, "Oh, well, sorry, dude." Well, he didn't say it quite like that, but he said, you got to go ahead and get here on your own. But people were stopping and they were getting pictures of him. And so he made his way over to the UN. But then this happened as well. Let me scroll back up here. Sorry, I'm toggling up. Remember, these world leaders, they're not used to having to be, let's say, low bar or on the totem pole. They are not used to that. They're used to having the red carpet. Everything stops for them. And that's not the case anymore. So what happened as well is, President Trump and Melania Trump, now which I find interesting, there was no Secret Service in front of Melania going as they were trying to get on the elevator. But listen to what Jesse Waters says. I'm only going to play the first part of this.
Daddy's not happy. He came to the UN today and it was a total mess. Everything was broken. The escalators weren't even working. Trump and Melania were riding it up and it just stopped. The First Lady lost her balance a bit, but steadied herself, thankfully, and then marched to the top. She could have been hurt. And the president looked over at the press and knew something was up. At first, we thought the escalator just malfunctioned, but then so did the teleprompter.
I don't mind making this speech without a teleprompter because the teleprompter is not working. I feel very happy to be up here with you nevertheless, and that way you speak more from the heart. I can only say that whoever's operating this teleprompter is in big trouble.
They're just trying to trip him up, and that's not going to happen. The UN staff members, they joked around that they may turn off the escalators and elevators and simply tell him they ran out of money, so he has to walk up the stairs. Well, I will say this, he walked without tripping, so did Melania in her stiletto heels. So I will say this, you guys are playing with the wrong couple. You guys they don't like the fact that President Trump is an incredibly popular president and Melania Trump is an incredibly, very, very well-loved and received First Lady. So the people from the different nations, they have to make an adjustment, and that's what I'm kind of seeing here. So President Trump, he is introduced to speak, and listen to the introduction to President Trump.
The Assembly will hear an address by His Excellency Donald Trump, President of the United States of America, I request protocol to escort His Excellency and invite him to address the Assembly.
And play it one more time.
The Assembly will hear an address by His Excellency Donald Trump.
And it hasn't been community noted. Okay, the community notes are going crazy right now. The staff is working overtime. They're community noting a lot of things. I will share some of those crazy things on here, but in today's podcast. But this is an example of the things that we were talking about, events that happen in the UK and how the role of how God chose President Trump to lead the role of helping the people, not just here in this country, but of the world. So while he's President Trump, and I'm going over just some of a few clips of what President Trump had shared at the UN, he was pretty much addressing the other nations on the things that he is already doing here in America. And to me, it sounded like the state of the state. So again, how big of a role President Trump has in terms of rolling out his version of Jasara, rolling out his version of global greatness, the global golden era, is just really remarkable that we are around to see this happening in our lifetime. If you want to see the full speech, you can click on this link right here. It will take you to the full speech. President Trump, he really literally came out swinging. So he was talking about our country is doing fantastic, but he just went ahead and started to address the issues of matter that were very, very important. The biggest one was the trafficking of children.
The previous administration also lost nearly 300,000 children. Think of that. They lost more than 300,000 children, little children, who were trafficked into the United States on the Biden watch, many of whom have been raped, exploited, and abused, and sold. Sold. Nobody talks about that. The fake news doesn't write about it. With many others, young children who are missing or dead. And we found a lot of these children, and we're sending them back. And we've been sending them back to their parents. They said, nobody knows who they are. They said, where do you come from? And they'll give us a country, and we'll find out, and we'll figure it out, and we'll bring them back to their homes. And the mother and father rush to the door, and their tears in their eyes. They can't believe that they're seeing their son or daughter, their little son or daughter again. We've done almost 30,000 of them so far. Any system that results in the mass trafficking of children is inherently evil. Yet that is exactly what the globalist migration agenda has done, and it's what it's all about. In America, those days, as you know, are over. The Trump administration is working, and we are continuing to work to track down the villains that are causing this problem, and also, as I said, to get back the 30,000 we've already returned. Now I think we're going to have another. We're going to find a lot. You're not going to find all of them. 300, more than 300,000. They're lost or they're...
It's remarkable how God chose President Trump to run this mission. We all came to this movement. The majority of us came to this movement because of this exact reason, to fight for the children. Now we're seeing those children, some of those children, years later, because you've been fighting for 7, 8, 9, 10 years on social media, and they've risen to the top, and now they're actually out there, and they have carried the baton of doing podcasts and sharing inspiration. And now they may not have been the trafficked children, but it is that generation that's rising up. President Trump, he has made it very clear in America, those days are over, meaning in how I heard it, and you can decide, those child trafficking days in America, they're done. It's done. But President Trump, he's taken lots of steps to go ahead and track down those villains. And I will share that with you in the middle of this podcast. President Trump is very excited about the 250th celebration, our birth of our nation, for 2026, which would be the 250th. And he's pretty much inviting those from other countries to come. He has expressed the importance of free speech. And he did say, together, let us defend free speech and free free expression. Let us protect religious liberty, including for the most persecuted religion on the planet today, and it's called Christianity, right? Because we know in many European countries, they have allowed a lot of other types of, they've allowed immigrants and illegal aliens in their countries that have, they exercise their own version of a religion, Sharia law, all of that. And it's very, 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 very heartbreaking. And then, of course, we've seen how the left here in our country have really denounced Christianity and following Christ and following God. President Trump is doing the very best he can to follow God's word and getting people back on track. He warns the leaders, I'm telling you, that if you don't get away from green energy scam, your country is going to fail. So he addresses the green energy, the green new scam deal. He talks about terrorist thugs smuggling poisonous drugs. We will blow you out of existence. He made that very, very clear. And we have seen a couple of different strikes on drug boats coming into America, and he just blows up those boats. They have drugs, and they have the people, the smugglers in them. Detaining and deporting illegals in the United States, it has stopped, and now he's encouraging all the other nations to do the same thing. He talked about failed experiment of open borders. So he is saying in Germany, 50% of the inmates in Germany prisons were foreign nationals or migrants. In Switzerland, 72%. So the prisons are filled with so-called asylum seekers who repaid the kindness of these nations, Germany, Switzerland, but they repaid it with crime. Doesn't that sound familiar here in America, right? Isn't that what happened with when Joe Biden and even all of the other past administrations? I will just say this all the way. I'm going to just go back down to Ronald Reagan, have allowed illegals to come into this country because the Democrats were losing their voter base. And that's my opinion only. You can decide. He talked about Europe is in serious trouble. They've been invaded by a force of illegals. It's never happened. And because they chose to be politically correct, they are doing nothing about it. And it's harming their own citizens. We have seen all of the different protests and people standing up for wanting to have they want their sovereign land back, and they want the illegals and the migrants to leave, to go home. And we've seen millions of people out there in the streets in different countries, right? Not only in the UN, not solving the problems it should, but he was also addressing that it's also creating new problems. The United Nations, now listen to you know what? I'm going to go ahead and play this clip.
The problems it should, too often, it's actually creating new problems for us to solve. The best example is the number one political issue of our time, the crisis of uncontrolled migration. It's uncontrolled. Your countries are being ruined. The United Nations is funding an assault on Western countries and their borders. In 2024, the UN budgeted $372 million in cash assistance to support an estimated 624,000 migrants journeying into the United States. Think of that. The UN is supporting people that are illegally coming into the United States, and then we have to get them out. The UN also provided food, shelter, transportation, and debit cards to illegal aliens. Can you believe that? On the way to infiltrate our southern border. Millions of people came through that southern border. Just a year ago, millions and millions of people were pouring in, 25 million altogether over the 4 years of the incompetent Biden administration. And now we have it stopped, totally stopped. In fact, they're not even coming anymore because they know they can't get through. But what took place is totally unacceptable. The UN is supposed to stop invasions, not create them and not finance them.
Now we're learning that it is the United Nations that's been sending a lot of these illegals to the borders into our country. And did you notice the expression of these other countries? Look at them. They weren't interested. They didn't want to hear that. They're not making any money. They're losing their side income. Shame on them. They have allowed, now this says El Salvador. So El Salvador, they're sending their people here in our country. And then, of course, you've got the president of El Salvador that's worked out a deal with President Trump to help out in arresting or maybe even detaining many of the thugs, the criminal thugs, into their prisons. These nations were getting a tongue lashing from Trump, and they deserved it. President Trump even talked about biological weapons. As we seek to reduce the threats of dangerous weapons today, I'm also calling on every nation to join us in ending the development of biological weapons once and for all. We know President Trump, he's stepping his foot down and he means business. When they don't do this, no, the biological weapons here in America, we already know what that involves, the vaccines, right? How maybe they are in cahoots with, I don't know, big pharma, manufacturing their own, bringing it here into this country. He is stepping his foot down on that and saying no more. And of course, there's another side income for the UN. So the child trafficking, the illegals, the biological weapons, they're getting a lot of their side income cut off. And then he's talking about, if Russia is not ready to make a deal to end the war, the United States is fully prepared to impose a very strong round of powerful tariffs. But for those tariffs to be effective, the European nations would have to join in adopting the exact same measures. So he's rallying for the European nations to go ahead and do the same thing. And they have to immediately cease all energy purchases from Russia. And again, we know that this has to be something that has got to be done because Russia, again, optically, the Russia, Ukraine, something happened, the timeline, I don't know what happened with the timeline, why that didn't end yet, but there's something that's going on. President Trump also met privately with different country leaders, Qatar, Saudi Arabia. Wasn't he just there not too long ago? Indonesia, Turkey, Pakistan, Egypt, UAE, and Jordan at the United Nations. So is he saying, okay, we're getting ready to roll it out, guys? I don't know. I'm not too sure how that's all playing out. And I'm sure he didn't list all of the nations, but those are the majority of the nations. So after this speech, what happened? This news broke. I know it's kind of like I'm going squirrel a little bit, but let me just share this and I'll tie it all together, right? Following President Trump's UN speech, this news broke with that Ryan Routh dude, the guy that tried to assassinate President Trump on President Trump's own golf course, how he got in again. He was guilty on all charges. And then he also attempted to stab himself with a pen in the courtroom. And he's found guilty and he is facing life in prison. Now, bear in mind, these thugs think that they can get away with trying to do bad things to definitely inherit the sitting president of the United States, or back at the time it happened, it was the candidate running for president of the United States. What I find very interesting is all the buddies that knew Ryan Routh, that have videos with him, that did a little, whatever, scenes in the car, whatever. All of those videos are bye-bye. They're gone. They're vanished. Poof. So all of those buddies are still on different platforms on social media. However, this dude right here, is he going to start singing? Did he sing? But more importantly, these thugs, they think that they can get away with this in the past, right? They think, don't worry, I can go ahead and represent myself. Because the mindset has been, there are liberal judges in these courtrooms, there are liberal juries in these courtrooms. I'm going to get off scot-free. I might get charged with one crime, maybe have to serve 2 years in prison. No. Was this a shock? Yes. And who else is this a shock to? Everybody else that has something that's pending with the DOJ, FBI, they have a lot. Right now, they're sitting there going, holy smokes, the courts are different. We are going to have a different strategy in defense because right now we could literally just yawn during court, not even have to go ahead and do any questioning, and my defendant will get away scot-free. No, I'm wondering if the lawyers are shifting their gears. Remember in yesterday's podcast on YouTube, we discussed how these lawyers are lined up for Antifa. Well, and they bail them out again, but there's now no cashless bail. And we have conservative judges that are getting confirmed, and we also have conservative judges already in place, and then we also have conservative U.S. attorneys in place. So there's a different ballgame. Is it going to be a different strategy? What happens when all of this starts to unravel? President Trump even addresses and he congratulates Pam Bondi and Todd Blanche, part of the DOJ, on the conviction for Ryan Routh. So that was big. So they're not used to these liberal courts. They get off scot-free. Not this time. The buddies are deleting Ryan Routh. He attempted to assassinate President Trump, and now he probably thinking he's arrogant, I'm sure, and sitting, I don't need an attorney. I don't have to pay an attorney. I can go ahead and represent myself in court because I'm going to get away scot-free. Can you imagine all the advice he was getting? Don't worry. We got you. Don't worry. The court system's in our favor. Don't worry. Well, now he faces life in prison, okay? So is this what we can expect for the other SWAT members? That's what I'm thinking, right? It's kind of interesting. Then this is what happens. So President Trump gives his UN speech, and then suddenly these videos start popping up. Here is somebody, this is actually posted by John Calhoun fans, and it is about a woman that is going out there, and she is talking about there's these barricades. Let me just go play one of these. And she's talking about these cement barricades that are up in the middle of the street. These are cement barricades. Okay, now pay attention to the house with the two fireplaces because I'm going to show you exactly where the location is. So it's on 17th Street towards Constitution, and it has cement walls. Cement walls, okay? So now I'm going to go ahead, and if you click on here, so again, I pay attention to this because I want to show you the location. Went ahead and did a Google search map. And I will go ahead, let me just scroll over here. All right. So Google, the satellite won't let me get to the side of the street. Okay, but what she does is she shows the barricade, she shows this wall, and then she shows the monument that's right behind here, behind these trees. So this is the location of where she's at. There's the house with the, no, if I go, let me just zoom up a little bit. There's the, let me zoom up a little bit more. There's the house with the two chimneys. So this is the location. It's on 17th Street. And there's the monument. So it's right in the middle of the city of Washington. And I find it very interesting that this is happening just after the UN speech, because how big, again, was the UN speech kind of like a directive of what's going to be happening, what's going to go on, right? So that's where it was, the barricade is. Then in terms of the proximity, this is where the person that filmed that is. And then this is where the White House is. So she was saying that she's on her way. She was trying her best to do a street podcast. She even said, I'm not as good as Nancy Drew, but I'm trying to explain this. And she was just very kind of shocked. But she couldn't get through to, this is Constitution Street. And she couldn't get through, so that she was taking her jog over to the White House, and she couldn't get through. And then they were showing that the cement wall was coming down, and this person asked the workers what's going on. They said it was a practice run, so they were showing this. And not that I don't doubt anons, I just wanted to get confirmation on what those workers were saying. And I asked, I go, is there any kind of practice runs with cement walls in Washington, D.C.? And it says this is from AI, there's no information in the provided context about practice runs for installing cement walls on the streets in Washington, D.C. Then there's other documents discuss design standards for structures like retaining walls, stairways, and pedestrian railings with the right-of-way in Seattle. Well, if you take a look, I'm scrolling back up. If you take a look at this, that does not look like a retaining wall. It's in the middle of the street. And then Penguin 6, he's got his own YouTube channel. He's a podcaster in DC. He goes out there, rides his bike, and he films all the stuff that's going on. And he said, and he posted this on X, first truckload of anti-scale rioting fencing arriving near the White House today. Not sure why at this time. And of course, this one got community noted because I'm telling you, and community notes, they're splitting hairs. So there's the post, right? Okay. And then this is what community notes. They are not being delivered to the White House. They are for the first annual test installation, or they are for the annual test installation of the 17th Street levee. Okay, I'm just saying, he's not saying they're arriving near the White House, so they're doing a lot of hair-splitting remarks for community notes. Again, we might see more of that. You're probably wondering, Santa, why are you even talking about this? Well, This is why. Back in 2021, when they put up the razor fence, I know there's been fencing going up around the Treasury since then, since 2021 to now, back in 2024. And so in 2021, when DC was fenced up, big things did happen. If you take a look at this podcast, at the 27:05 mark. This is the same day as the fake inauguration for Joe Biden. Did Nancy Pelosi get dealt with? Did Roy Blunt get arrested? And also there were a lot of things. So, and this is when the military wouldn't even. This is the inauguration, so it was kind of sparse. Even the media was kind of concerned about that. The media is saying this is weird. And then you had, if he had 80 million votes, there's no way. I mean, that thing would be packed. And then you had the military. Many of the military, they turned their back. Okay, this was a death march. I mean, I don't know if this was a funeral march for Joe Biden, but they turned their back on Joe Biden. And then I'm just going here. The marshal, we've seen this marshal many times, pointing and telling Nancy Pelosi where to go. I'm going really fast. You can go ahead and click on the article to get this podcast. And the buses, this is posted by Mustang. Remember when Mustang Medic was out there on January 27th of 2021 and how we was posting all those busloads of people? And then this one was really big. This was this is posted by Glenn Leader Mayer, and he was going over the events, and he was doing close-ups and people standing in line, and they were getting bussed, and they was at Congress. He was showing children walking out of the White House, and then how there was a firework display that was going on. So were they celebrating that these dirty Congress people got dealt with, right? Again, if you're new to the movement, this is the stuff that we kind of dig into, but see how this, I'm going to just stop right here. See how these people right here? He was really highlighting these people that they were walking, maybe they were getting processed, and then they were just getting an expedited version of going to being dealt with. So just kind of sharing that with you, that's what happened the last time that the DC got fenced up. So earlier, about 20 minutes ago, when President Trump was talking about making sure that they can catch the villains involved with just doing bad things. Well, guess what happens on the 30th of September? The government will no longer issue paper checks. It's done. Everything is going to have to be digital. Dirty DC politicians, dirty government, their NGOs, they're more than likely screaming right now. If you hear random screams and you live close to DC, it's probably them, because they know the paper checks are done. Remember, Doge, Elon Musk, when he was the Doge, and then even after that, they found all of these checks paid, Social Security checks paid to people that don't even exist. One was 346 years old, right? Who's cashing those checks? Now they're going to have they're going to be able to track all where the payments are going. This applies also for the IRS. So federal government, they're no longer any paper checks. If you want to update your address or your information, please go to this website. Just click on here, the picture, and it'll take you there. Why I'm sharing that with you is because Wall Street Apes posted this. It is a protester who is paid through an NGO, a non-government organization, $75,000 a year to protest. All right, now how much more are these people getting paid? Remember, President Trump, he had called out George Soros, and we know George Soros and his foundation got funded by U.S. aid from information that we've shared. You decide, you can research yourself, but you can look also on past podcasts. George Soros, but also who else is a part of that? And all these entities, remember Stephen Miller said that they will be dealt with, anybody who's not just the violent people, but the people that are funding them. And then President Trump addressing the nations about funding. So they are now going to have a handle on certain people with any dirty, nefarious activity. Then Jimmy Kimmel's back, and President Trump, he's back for a reason. Maybe he's bait. I don't know. He's back and whatever. But I'm wondering is this going to be the kind of like the end of fake news, because President Trump, he's like, I can't believe he's back. Anyway, he's saying, I think we're going to test ABC out on this. Let's see how we do. Last time I went after them, they gave me $16 million. This one sounds even more lucrative. So is Jimmy Kimmel or somebody or ABC, they're going to have another flop, and then they just go bye-bye. So I am just letting you know what's going on and what's happening so that you can just be a little bit more prepared. Now, My wonderful assistant. She's so awesome. She's been helping me put together messages on Bible messages. Since we have a lot of people that are going out there, whether you're millennial, Gen Zer, Gen Xer, baby boomer, you're going out there to help encourage people to help spread love and light. If you need some kind of reference of Bible verses or content, you can go ahead and take a look at these. These are all verses, and this one is on hope and how it just helps to encourage you on messages of God's messages to you. And hopefully you will find, and there will be more, and we have it on our beachbroadcast.org page. So you can scan this QR code if you needed to. It's just going to be, it's just a very simple website because all it's going to have, and the more we add, we'll just keep adding and adding. But you can look on different passages if you also need it just for your own, just to heal your heart. You can go ahead and find out. We haven't posted anything on forgiveness, but we'll have other topics up here, and you can just click on and they're short videos. They're like 3 minutes, 4 minutes long, but they have Bible verses and scripture verses for you. So hopefully that will help in terms of nourishing your soul. I just want to thank you so much, Anons and surfers, who are just, oh man, doing awesome things. And because of you, think of this, because of you, things are changing. And that's where God needed you. God chose you. He needed you. And I want to say thank you. I wish you a beautiful afternoon, day, or evening, and have yourselves just a blessed day. And I will have a show very soon. Aloha.